Join us as we delve into captivating subjects such as groundbreaking projects, current affairs, inspiring initiatives, among others. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and knowledge, shedding light on the Arab League of Nations resolutions, and also Ethiopia's reaction to that resolution, Egypt's reaction to Ethiopia's response, as well as we make a conclusion where we provide solution to these problems. Ethiopia is preparing to conduct the filling of the Grand Ethiopuan Renaissance Dam, and this will be done during the rainy season that is set to start in the month of June. Let's look at the facts about this dam so that you can get a clear understanding on what we're talking about. Grand Renaissance Dam is located in Blue River Nile, in a region called Benishangul Gumuz of Ethiopia. This is 40 kilometers east of the Sudanese border. It is a hydroelectric power generation plant, and it's primarily built to generate power to ensure that Ethiopia is fully reliant. Once it's fully operational, it's expected to generate a capacity of 6.45 gigawatts, and this will make it one of the largest hydropower plants in Africa and also in the world. The dam will create a reservoir with a storage capacity of approximately 74 billion cubic meters of water. This is a massive reservoir and is intended to regulate the flow of Blue River Nile and also provide a stable water supply for irrigation, domestic use, and mainly electricity generation. The construction of this dam started on April 2nd, 2011, and it is expected to cost $5 billion. It is being built by the Italian construction company, which is called Salin Impagro. And this dam, the funding mode is unique because when Ethiopia was not able to get funds from the traditional sources, it issued a bond that required the citizens to contribute to the construction of this dam, and it had a very unique financing model. The first phase of filling of this dam started in July 2020, and by August same year, water level had increased to 540 meters. This was 40 meters higher than the bottom of the river, which is at 5,500 meters above sea level. The second filling was completed on July 19th, 2021, and the water level increased to around 575 meters. The third filling was completed on August 2022 to a level of 600 meters. This year, it is expected that the fourth filling will happen, and this is expected to happen during the rainy season. The dam is being filled naturally, such that when the rains are heavy, the water levels goes up quickly. There has been controversy and negotiations over this dam. It has been a subject of controversy between the three countries, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. Sudan and Egypt have expressed concern about the potential impact of the dam on their water resources and downstream flows. Negotiations have been ongoing to address the concerns and also try to reach a beneficial agreement. The two countries share concerns and interests regarding the dam due to its potential impact on their water resources. Both countries heavily rely on the River Nile for their water supply. They are concerned that the construction and operation of the GERD could reduce the flow of river, affecting the water scarcity, agricultural practices, and overall development of the two countries. The two countries have cited the treaties that were signed in 1902 and 1959, which allocated Nile waters to downstream countries, that is Egypt and Sudan, in total disregard of upstream countries such as Ethiopia, the East African countries, and the rest. Ethiopia argues that it was not part of the treaties that unfairly allocated waters to Sudan and Egypt, and leaving the other Nile Basin Initiative countries out. The filling and operation of the GERD have been subject of controversy and contention among the three countries. One major point of contention has been the filling of the dam reservoir. Ethiopia initiated the filling process in 2020, causing concern for the downstream countries, particularly Egypt and Sudan, as they feared a significant reduction of their water flow during the filling phase. Egypt and Sudan have expressed concern about the potential impact of the dam on their water resources. They are particularly worried about the potential disruption of the river flow, which could affect agricultural water supply and the livelihoods of millions of people in both countries. The three countries have engaged in negotiations to address the concerns and reach an agreement on the filling and operation of the dam. However, the talks have dragged, and according to Egypt, the three countries have not agreed on the schedule. Ethiopia is for a quick filling, while Egypt and Sudan feel that it should be done over a long period, probably 15 years. International and regional organizations, including the African Union, the United Nations, the United States, have been involved in mediation efforts to facilitate negotiations and foster cooperation between the parties involved. These mediation efforts aim to find out to get a mutually acceptable solution that addresses the concerns of all the stakeholders. Ethiopia has recently announced that the dam is 90% complete, and already the dam has started production of power. Ethiopia had already announced that it will continue to fill the dam and operate accordance with the agreement on the declaration of principles that was signed in March 2015 between the three countries. This declaration of principles says that filling and operation of the dam will be with full respect to the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization of transboundary water resources. We are aware that on 20th February 2022, the dam started producing electricity for the first time, and with this production it delivered 375 megawatts, and second 375 megawatt turbine was also commissioned in August 2022. Professor of Geology and Water Resources at Cairo University, Abbas Sharaki, in a post on Facebook, claimed that the two turbines that were commissioned, the first one in February and the second one in August, had not been working for a week. The professor claimed that the water flows through one of the drain holes with a daily rate of 20 million cubic meters. Depending on the satellite images that he produced, he detected that the heightening of the side walls to the level of 626 meters and middle ones to the level of 600 meters. Professor Sharaki estimates that the height of the middle wall would reach 620 meters this year, which in turn would allow holding of 17 billion cubic meters in the fourth filling. The quantity is equivalent to the previous three filling periods, so it's expected that the filling this year, according to this professor, will be high. The professor claimed that the third filling conducted between July 11th and August 11th increased the quantity of water held to 9 billion cubic meters, upping the total reservoir to 17 billion cubic meters. The filling, or the first filling that took place between July 1st and 21st in 2020 had 4.9 cubic meters filled. The second one, which was between July 4th and 18th, 2021, had around 3 billion cubic meters being filled. Sharaki states that in July, the 2 billion cubic meters has been released since 2022 by opening of the two gates. The professor further notes that the construction works in the dam would persist for the next 5 to 6 years, but the middle wall needs to be heightened for the reservoir capacity to hold the full capacity of 74 billion cubic meters as initially planned. Professor Sharaki is not the only one who is talking about the dam. Arab League is also talking about the dam, and this time in their 32nd summit, they issued a resolution or decision where they urged the parties which are involved to have good faith so that they can be able to reach a deal on the dam. Arab leaders want the three countries to come up and to sit and talk and to reach a balanced and fair, legally binding agreement on how the dam should be operated and filled. The leaders made these remarks in a decision titled the Ethiopian Dam, following the 32nd Arab League Summit that was held in Saudi Arabia in May. The League resolution supported Egypt and Sudan's calls for legally binding agreement over the operation of the dam, which they say unfairly allows Ethiopia to control the Nile resources. Egypt and Sudan are members of the Arab League of Nations. Following the summit, the Arab leaders affirmed the need to reach a legally binding agreement on GERD, which would achieve the joint interests of the three countries and preserve the water rights of each of Sudan and Egypt. In this regard, the leaders expressed appreciation for the efforts made to conduct negotiations on the dam under the auspices of African Union. However, the leaders expressed concern over the continued stumbling of the negotiations in light of Ethiopian unilateral acts. The decision called for Ethiopia to refrain from unilateral measures that harm the water interests of Egypt and Sudan, including the continuation of the filling and operation of the dam without reaching a deal with two downstream countries. The leaders urged the three countries to abide by international law principles, which represented the rule of not causing water use related harm to countries bordering transboundary rivers, the principle of fair reasonable use of international waterways, the principle of cooperation, and the principle of prior notification and consultation. Moreover, the leaders called on the UN Security Council to take the required measures within the framework of its responsibility to make sure that the issues are settled. Arab League says that the measures by the Security Council should include the full implementation of Presidential Council issued by the Council in September 2021, calling for the three countries to engage in negotiations to reach an acceptable binding deal on the filling and operation of the dam within a reasonable time frame. The Arab leaders affirmed that the Ethiopian unilateral measures on GERD violate the applicable rules of international laws, especially Declaration of Principles (DOP), which was adopted by Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia in Khartoum in 2015. Egypt and Sudan have been calling for Ethiopia to sign an agreement which is legally binding on GERD in order to ensure that water is preserved and its people rights are safeguarded. The two downstream countries have urged Ethiopia to refrain from unilateral measures with regard to mega dam, warning the consequences of filling and operating the dam unilaterally before binding deal is signed. However, Ethiopia has rejected the signing of such a deal and has continued its dam filling and operation plans over the past year that it has done it in 3 years. Ethiopia is also preparing to implement the fourth filling of the dam once the rains come this year. Ethiopia responding to this Arab resolution, and while doing so, the minister said that Egypt's decision to involve the Arab League of Nations was an affront to the African Union and its member states, and it was a deliberate mischaracterization of its position. Ethiopia criticized the resolution adopted by the Arab League of Nations, stating that it will escalate the long-standing conflict on Nile waters. Ethiopia Ministry of Foreign Affairs noted that the resolution echoed by Egypt was hostile regarding the GERD. Ethiopia says that the decision to undermine the AU and its member states has already been crossed, and it adds that the resolution is an affront to African efforts to bring amicable negotiation solution to the long-standing Nile dispute between Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan. Ethiopia added that this decision runs contrary to the cherished and shared history of the people of Africa and the Arab world. They say that the details of filling the dam, including the volume and duration, has been agreed upon between the experts of the three countries, and throughout the process, Ethiopia has catered for the concerns of the two countries and will continue to act respecting the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization of water. Ethiopia adds that Egypt's attempt to exert force using the Arab League of Nations Forum represents its lack of good faith, and it in itself a violation of the agreement on the declaration of principles that were concluded between the three countries. The GERD is an African issue. The disagreement between Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan can only be solved through good faith and compromise in the spirit of finding Africa's solution to African problems. Ethiopia says it regrets the attempts by Egypt to politicize the GERD negotiations and turn it to an Arab issue. Despite Egypt's concerns and repeated warning, Ethiopia has vowed to continue filling the dam, and this year they are planning to do it starting June. Egypt reacted to Ethiopia's response by criticizing the country for its false claim that Arab League of Nations has crossed the line as far as dealing with these issues concerned. Egypt says that the statement was a desperate attempt to drive a wedge between Arab and African countries, and that Ethiopia had no right to speak for the entire continent. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt says that Egypt has a long history of supporting national struggles movement in Africa, and its efforts and resources has been allocated to support economic and social development and peace building programs on the continent. Egypt says, is pinning its hope of economic development and power generation on the dam, and Egypt says that it relies on this water, and there is a need for the countries to come into an amicable agreement that will determine how the filling and operation of the dam is concerned. With each of the three countries having an interest on this dam or River Nile, there is a need to reach a compromise. Ethiopia should get its power, and Egypt and Sudan should get assurance that they will not be affected once these dams start filling and continue filling and start operations. Addis Ababa says that it will continue to fill the GERD without seeking permission from anyone. They say that they have no obligation to request permission from anyone to fill the dam. Egypt says that Ethiopia remarks to proceed filling the dam regardless of the downstream countries' rights. It's another evidence of unilateralism that goes beyond the scope of negotiation. In conclusion, we say that to reach a solution on the GERD that satisfies the concerns of the three countries, there are some key actions that need to be taken. One is that all countries or all the parties must engage in a sincere, transparent, and constructive dialogue. This includes open communication, active listening, and a willingness to understand each other's concerns and interests. Regular and meaningful discussions should take place to foster trust and build common ground in these negotiations. Secondly, international and regional mediators such as AU, the UN, and also the neighboring countries can play a crucial role in facilitating negotiations. They can provide impartial guidance, technical expertise, and platform for constructive dialogue, helping to bridge gaps and find mutually acceptable solutions. Thirdly, there should be sharing of scientific data, hydraulical information, impact assessment, which are related to this dam. And this is essential for all the parties to have a comprehensive understanding